Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's another Wednesday, another weekly tech forum sponsored by Love My Tool. Today we have a special guest from one of our sponsors, NetFort, doing a live demo. So before I introduce him, it just occurred to me that Tim and I have been doing Love My Tool and all the other things for a while. I actually know Tim before that, and as you know, Tim is not a simple man. And but he does have an algorithm. I realize. If you want to be his friend, it helps if you have a good old-fashioned Irish first name that starts with a D, and then in addition, if you say something critical about span ports, then he's your friend for life. So I of course fit that description perfectly. But it turns out that our special guest today, Darragh Delaney, also fit that description. Darragh has written 2 articles for Love My Tool, one of which is about span ports, the do's and don'ts of span ports. But today he's representing his company NetFort, and he's going to do a live demo. Good evening, Darragh. How are you?
Good evening, Denny. I'm good here. Yeah.
Okay, so you are the, if I understand it right, you are the director of technical support. Is that right?
Yeah, technical services. I head up technical services. I also run marketing at the moment as well.
So you're the perfect guy to do a demo. Let me also introduce you to our other panel. Chris Bihari is also a fellow vendor. He's also a fellow sponsor to the site Love My Tool. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Denny. How's everybody doing today?
We're doing great. So it's actually rare to find you 2 weeks in a row.
I know. I told you, you guys are going to get sick of me in a couple of weeks. I want to be around, so
maybe before we start, I give you a minute and a half to give us a summary of your company. What have you guys been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. At Garland Technology, we've been really last 6 weeks focused on actually getting involved in some pretty neat 40 gig projects. So I'll just spend the quick 60 seconds to talk about that. But we've been really diving into some larger deployments of 40 gig, which is pretty, pretty new, and so we're pretty excited about that. And one of the things we're finding that we talked about a while back is getting involved in the implementation and install of different types of MTP, MPO connectors, and the cabling infrastructures. And so, one of the neat things we've been doing is just doing some education on the different types of Type A, Type B, and Type C cabling in 40 gig, which, quite frankly, is making a lot of people lose their hair. So, we'll have to get a little more detail, but that's been pretty exciting to get involved in some of these projects, and I think that we need to revisit it, because I'm finding that not too many people know about the 40 gig interconnects, and it gets very complicated quickly, especially if you're going to interconnect data centers or have some longer runs. And so that's been fun. That's actually been very fun.
We should get you back doing a Shockfest.tv episode then. Yeah. So anyway, I think your company is extremely complementary to NetFort. You provide non-intrusive access to the network, and then Darragh's company basically takes that traffic and do something wonderful with it. Darragh, I'll let you jump right into it and go ahead and kind of lay the groundwork. Tell us what problem does your product solve, and then maybe just go in and do a demo then. Go ahead, Darragh.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Denny. But there are numbers of problems we solve. The number one is where they need information to troubleshoot problems, slow networks, a notification from, let's say, somebody like Google that there's some sort of malware originating from their network. It could be that somebody senior in the organization wants them to know what's happening. Maybe there's sensitive documents moving around their network, and the IT people have got to have some sort of audit trail there of what's happening. So troubleshooting, compliance, security. If someone has an issue like that, they come looking for a product like LANGuardian. So I'll switch on screen share, if that's okay, Denny.
Sure.
Um,
Do you need a drum roll? No.
Hopefully not. No. Don't start banging drums if you see my screen.
I got my drums on. I got my trumpets. Okay.
Okay.
I got
You
my
just
Irish
see,
put on in there. I can go get it.
Do you see a screen, an intro and demo?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Opening. Good.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so this is what I mentioned. What I'm going to do is very quick for people who may not be familiar with LANGuardian, just a very quick intro what it is. This won't be death by PowerPoint. Most of this, as you mentioned, will be a live demo. And the questions or the scenarios that I'm going to go through is the network is slow. Maybe the internet is slow. How can we find out what's happening? A very, very common one. A file has gone missing. Can we find out what happened? Users in a remote site are complaining. It just seems to be one site. Can we figure out what's happening? Or somebody's come along. Can we figure out what this person's done on the network? It could be a contractor, but people want to know what this person did on the network. So that's what I'm going to do in the demo. I'm not going to show off a whole bunch of features, or no, I can't talk about our wonderful technology, but those are the 5 use cases I'll show in the demo. Very quick, for people who don't know, we're up and running now for quite a while, since 2002. Our headquarters are based in Ireland, and that's where I am right now. Well, on the west coast, as we say, the next parish is Boston, straight across. Customers all over the place, from US Navy, Tyco, Formula 1 teams, lots and lots of colleges and universities. That has been a very much a sweet spot for us for many years. Big networks, unknown users coming in, people want to know what's happening. So LANGuardian, well, that's our main product. We're pretty much a one-product company. It's called LANGuardian, and it's deep packet inspection software. So this is not an appliance. It's software that you can download, and it's for investigating, monitoring, and reporting on network activity. What we do is we grab metadata. So we're not a packet recorder. We do not store every packet. We analyze every packet, and we extract certain metadata from that packet. And then customers use that metadata, as I mentioned, for troubleshooting, for compliance reasons, or for network security reasons. And it's a balance here. Some say, well, you do need to capture all the packets. And that might be true, but you're going to need huge storage for that. Other people say, well, look, if you just look at flow data, that's enough. Well, for a lot of issues, that is not enough. You need to be somewhere in between, and that's what we try and do. And it'll monitor what we're trying to display the information in management-friendly graphics, graphs. Most people can understand what's happening. So to get it installed, you can install it physical, you can install it on a virtual platform. It doesn't need operating systems. It's not a Windows app. This is a self-contained download. You've got your operating system, you've got your database. You don't need to install agents. All you need is a span port off a managed switch. And I suppose this can be a subject of debate, span ports and where do you go. I mean, I have the little asterisks here, be careful, don't overload it. Common issue people have is they realize how powerful span ports are, and then go to town on the span port. They throw everything at it, and suddenly they've maxed out the gig port. What we're finding, and actually we're talking to Chris and Garland, is that span ports are a huge demand now. Some of our customers have ran out of span ports, and they need something to be between us and the span port and send traffic to different tools. So sports people are a lot more familiar with them now, and that's our primary data source. We also extract information from Active Directory. The big things customers like with us is being able to see usernames. So that hopefully gives you all an introduction. So I'm just going to go to my browser here. And if it hasn't changed, somebody shout out. But what you're looking at now is our web front end. 90% of the time people are accessing the data through the web front end. You can get reports. We actually integrate with other tools as well, from SolarWinds, WhatsApp, McAfee products. Lots of products can actually use us as a network kind of data store. They use our API to access our information. So let me go through the couple of scenarios. The first one is a general perception the internet or the network is slow. We're not exactly sure. A couple of users have said that things are really slow today. Do we know what's happening? So don't really have much to go on other than perception that things are slow on the network. So what we have is out of the box a management summary, what we call a dashboard. And I can take a look at what's happening. So the first element here shows me the top applications that are in use. Now this is not based on port numbers. This is based on fingerprinting the application. So this is a kind of fairly new feature to LANGuardian. We've gone away from looking at port numbers, saying port 80's web. That's a dangerous thing to say. It could be anything. For all you know, it's BitTorrent. So we actually fingerprint the applications, and this is the output. So in the last hour, 53% of traffic that's moved around is file share traffic. We can look at the graph here, which shows us total traffic being processed by the system. There was a peak here, which is TCP traffic, and we have an unusual peak here of UDP traffic. Definitely worth checking out. And probably the kind of killer feature in LANGuardian is when you see something like this peak here, you can actually click on it and drill down. So mostly TCP traffic, and then we can start doing our analysis here and drill down. So Microsoft traffic, and we can go down here. Now, if you want to go down and see all these clients and mounted data, this is the beauty of LANGuardian. You can keep drilling down. Not only that, but you can see, well, what users are responsible for this here? So it's actually Laura Ashton was logged on to that IP address at that time. This is really good if you've got DHCP because IP address could be anything. We store on our database what user was accessing the network from that IP at this time, and you've got the amount of data that they're moving around. So usually between 2 and 3 clicks, you can go from a top-level view to see the username, to see the client, to see the amount of data that they've moved around. Or you could do something like just click on the file share traffic here and actually see, and this is where the metadata really kicks in. This is the file that was responsible here. This transaction of this, what looks like somebody's moved a virtual machine, was responsible for, it's 5.92 gigs of data, and this archive file was generated 4 gigs of data. So this is the metadata we've extracted from, in this case, file share traffic. So most, what we find is, especially mid-market, is they don't want to look at Wireshark and bits and bytes. They want to go from a graphic to things like this, which is showing them the names of files, the amount of data. So why is the network slow? Well, we can take a look at the applications running. We can take a look at the graph, which I had a look at here earlier on. And we can drill down and see, well, how much data is moving around and who's responsible for it. And to put it in context, because this is always the question that comes up, well, how do I know that this is not, this could be normal. 80 gigabytes data could be very normal. And that's very true. So what you can do in that case, let's take a look at the report again. We could change the time period here to go back and say, well, let's look at the previous hour and see can we spot if anything has changed on our network. So we've got this historical data store where you can go back and see what happened a week ago, 2 days ago, an hour ago. So put things in context so you can spot changes and differences and what applications have got busier recently. Very, very common way people use the system is start at the dashboard and look for an anomaly, drill down, find the user, find the application, see what resource they accessed. Very similar, and go to my next use case, is the internet is slow. Amazing how many people buy LANGuardian just for internet monitoring. They may have proxies, they may have all sorts of fancy firewalls, but firewalls are great doing firewall work, proxies are great doing proxy work. I've yet to come across one which does all of those plus good reporting. People seem to like our reporting. They let the firewall do the firewall job, and we do the reporting. The reason they like our reporting is, yeah, we can have graphics, but when we report back on what sites are being accessed, it's not trying to do a lookup on an IP address and second guess what a an IP address might be in content delivery networks, that's problematic. We actually show the domain name, and we extract this from the HTTP headers of the web traffic. So it doesn't matter if you're going proxy or direct. We can extract from that the domain names that you're visiting. So somebody's been on our own website, netfort.com. What have they been doing? That's set up. 52% bandwidth is just this one website alone. We can simply drill down. So a single click, I can see that we've got 2 clients, but one in particular is really busy. The 2 gigs is they're responsible for. Second click, I can now see what they're doing. They're on NetFort, and they're downloading our OVA, our virtual machine. I can see the amount of data. So I've gone from the top level view, 2 clicks, I could see the client. I could get the username if I want as well. I can see the site, and I can see the resource. So this resource that we capture here is really important when people are trying to troubleshoot, because you're trying to figure out sometimes, is this business related, or maybe it's, somebody's on YouTube watching videos. So we're trying to figure out, is this legitimate activity, or is somebody just messing during the working hours? So if you want to know what's happening on your internet pipe, out of the box dashboard, take a look at the domains people are accessing and drill down. So from a security point of view, another very useful thing we do when it comes to internet monitoring is we analyze the ports that are in use at the perimeter of the firewall, or at the network perimeter. So what's going in and out the firewall? So I have my outbound connections web and stuff there. I'm looking at my inbound connections here. In this case, we've set up the system in our configuration in here. You define what your local subnets are. So if you're using public subnets, that's all pre-configured in there. But if you're like a university, what you do is you add your private IP ranges in there, or sorry, your public IP ranges in there, so LANGuardian knows what's inside and what's outside. And once it's got that information, what you can do is things like this. These are inbound connections. So somebody outside the firewall has made a connection inbound on port 10022. Very strange. Tell me more. I drill down on that traffic, and what LANGuardian does is actually fingerprints the application. What they've found is they're running an SSH connection over port 10022. So this will be very suspect. Somebody's found possibly a hole here in the firewall. Once they're SSH'd into the network, they could go pretty much anywhere. And if I drill down again, I can find the source, where that client is. This is the machine they're connecting to. And I drill down again. So it's not just about domains here. It's also about other activity, whether it's, in this case, SSH, BitTorrent, Skype, whatever. We can fingerprint the applications, whether it's at the perimeter or at the edge, and find the source and destination. In this case, I would probably block off this IP straight away. It's very suspect. It's connecting to a local machine over this port using SSH protocol. So that's where 2 scenarios there. One is the network is slow. One is the internet is slow. I started off not much to go on other than users complaining, and I looked at my dashboards and I drilled down. The next very common use case is where you have something to go on. A user has said, I was working on a document, it was there this morning, but it's gone. Can we figure out who deleted it, what time it was deleted? I really need to know. And in that case, we could go to our search feature. So we've got 4 options here: bandwidth, file activity, web activity, and forensics. So it's a file, and I'm going to go to file activity. And what we simply do is we type in the name of the file, as much as we know. In this case, some finance document has gone missing. And press go. Oops. Something is gone. Make sure I'm actually running this as a virtual machine. Oh, there it is. Not sure what happened to my virtual machine there. Anyways, I search the file, so I search for finance. And there's a lot of activity associated with finance here. I may need to double check with the user. Is there anything else you could tell me? I need something else to go on here. And I said, oh yeah, it was a profit and loss document. So we'll search here. We see, okay, here's the profit and loss accounts PDF. So this may be what they're looking for here. And then I can drill down on this. And I can actually see, sure enough, this file was deleted off the network at this date, at this particular time. Let's find out what user is responsible for this. Oops. Don't have a user for that one, actually. Let me pick one I have a user for. Let's get some users here. So Laura Ashton here actually accessed that profit and loss document. Different one, and I can drill down and see the action here, and we've got the user. So what I need to do is actually contact this user, and because a lot of the time what happens is they accidentally butterfingers, they move it onto their local machine, put it on a USB stick, drop it into another folder. A lot of times it's an accident. It's not, you know, something malicious. It's just something's happened here. They don't see this happening, or they feel guilty and say nothing to nobody. So we'll call this user, ask them have their local copy. Maybe they've put it on USB, get them to put it back up on the network. We don't need to go near tapes, and we can we've solved the problem, you know. And if the user deleted the file, well, that's okay. We'll just tell them, look, that was a shared document. Other people needed to work on it. Please don't do that again. And we'll go back to tape for the previous whenever the last backup ran prior to this. Well, at least we hope we have a backup. But we know exactly when this happened, so we know what tape to look for. Very, very common. Amazing every day how many customers tell us that they use the system for tracking down deleted files, files moved. So my next use case, and this will be a very common use case where customers would have a data center and remote sites in different parts of the world, or, you know, different parts of the US, or wherever they may be. And users in one location are complaining that the network is slow. And you're kind of thinking, well, maybe it's the WAN, maybe it's the local network. It's not the whole network, because it's just this particular branch is complaining. So how can we troubleshoot? Well, we have something to go on. We have the remote site complaining. So what we need to do is figure out what is the IP range they use at that remote site. And if we get that, and we're actually in our next update to LANGuardian, we're going to allow people to define subnets. So you can just type in New York, for example. You don't need to remember subnets. But for this version I'm running here, I just typed in the subnet I've assigned to New York, 10.1.1.24, for example. And I need to see what traffic is moving between the data center where this LANGuardian is and the New York office. So what do we see on the line? Well, we see 55% of traffic is file share traffic and 9% is web. So huge proportion of traffic is file share traffic. So before I even look at other elements here, I need to figure out what sort of file shares are moving up and down. So I simply click on the traffic volume here, and I can see immediately it's the same one we looked at earlier. It's actually somebody, for whatever reason, has tried to copy in this case, some virtual machine across the link. So I'm going to get straight on to this. It's obviously somebody's messed up with a file share. They're copying traffic up and down the line. I don't need to upgrade bandwidth on the line at the moment anyways. I don't need to go buying a whole pile of fancy packet shaping. I just need to look at the way the users are operating there and see why did they need to be copying data like this across the link. So before people spend money, it's usually, we always say to them, even if it's not LANGuardian, before you throw bandwidth at a problem or devices, go get visibility first, understand what's happening, and then decide on what to do. Because in this case, it might make more sense to install a local file system at that site, so they can, you know, besides accessing shares over the WAN link. So there's other things I could look at here. Who are the top talkers on the link? What type of protocols? What type of domains are people accessing? We've a lot of Windows Update. Seems unusual. Why are they coming across the link for that? A whole bunch of clients have connected to Windows Update. Tell me more. You can actually see the patches that have been downloaded here and how much data is associated with each patch. This is really getting into low-level stuff. Not quite packets, but lots of detail here. But this can be really important if you're troubleshooting a problem. In fact, one of our customers last week in the UK, I think it was in Newcastle, they have a training center. They were starting a big class in the training center. Of course, it hadn't been switched on all summer. Nobody could log on. The whole network's grinding to a halt, scratching their heads what was wrong. Looked at the LANGuardian, and sure, what they found was obvious. The PCs all tried to download a bunch of updates that had been released over the summer and was just maxing out the link between that training center and the main data center where the connection went back to. Kind of obvious, people were saying, well, surely, why didn't we think of that? But it's only when you actually look at the traffic you realize this type of thing happens. And the final use case I'll talk about, and sometimes this one becomes outside of IT. It could be HR. In fact, it could be a third party. There's all sorts of course, the big thing at the moment is the celebrity photos and how they were hacked and what happened. So in our case, we talk about forensics. It could be somebody coming in and say, well, can we find out what that user done? Because there's some suspicion as to maybe what they did yesterday at lunchtime. We have something to go on again. We have a username, or maybe with an IP, but I've got a username to go on. So I go to my search page again, and I'm going to go for forensics, and I'm going to put in the username. And the one I've been asked to investigate is somebody called Helen. So we type in, and that's her there. And let's take a look at what this user has done on the network. Looking at last hour, earlier we can go back here, we go 24 hours, we could select the last week, whatever we need, but the last hour is fine for this. 77, 3/4 of their activities filed here. Some Oracle traffic, some SSL. They're running Dropbox, you can see here. They're accessing Windows Update, sportinglife.com, maybe that's the reason been asked for, but this shows us actually they've logged on to 2 separate systems. These are the 2 machines they've logged on to. This is the amount of traffic, the volumes of traffic, and these are the applications that the user has fired up since they switched their systems on. These are the files they've been accessing on our network over here. These are the websites they've been accessing. And this here is showing any security events that the user's systems are triggering. We have an intrusion detection system in LANGuardian as well, so it's detected they're using Dropbox. One of the devices they put in is brand new. We've never seen it before because LANGuardian informs us that a new Ethernet MAC address is associated with the user. Very typical there of a wireless device coming into the network that would fire off. Dropbox, some network scan activity. We can drill down on that, just have a quick look and make sure nothing unusual. Yeah, nothing unusual. I see their IP is connecting to lots of external sites over HTTPS. It's probably very active web browsing. Might need to double check that, but at least it's not over port 445 or a virus spreading around the network. So that's a very common one there of a user request or a request for information associated with a user. Can we find out what somebody's doing on the network?
So the user is focused on as an IP address, right?
Yes. The way the user integration works is when somebody logs onto a network and they authenticate with an Active Directory, and they're given a token. So when their transactions, when they connect to servers, that username is really no longer visible. The username is not in the packet. Yeah. So what is present, though, is on the domain controller. So if you have auditing enabled, there will be a record, depends on the version of Windows, could be VintID 540, which will have that this username logged on to this IP address at this particular time. Now, from our database, because of the way we capture packets, we're full of IP addresses. And that event is kind of the bit of magic glue that associates packets with a username, because it's at that time that Active Directory authenticated user, that's the IP they had. So we read that back, we store that, and that's how we get the usernames in the reports.
Yeah, because most internal hacks we see are spoofed IP, spoofed MACs. And unless you use an Active Directory, as like you said, and even that, there's a walk around that too. But this is really nice to be able to go back and look at what was going on.
Yeah, we talk to customers. We ask resellers, what do you really like about LANGuardian? And a lot of them say I can see usernames, because a lot of IT folks, they keep the network running, and they get these kind of requests of management. They really don't want to deal with it, but the management want things that they can understand, and throwing them and giving them a report with IP addresses and MAC addresses, they just look at it and go, jeepers, I don't really understand what you're telling me here. But if you give them a report with a username and, oh yes, I know that, I actually know that person, they work over there, it's management friendly as well, usernames. And I suppose management are signing off on monitoring tools more. They need to see value in these things as well.
Yeah, it looks pretty easy to read. That's really nice.
Yeah, we used to actually, our reporting was very much tabular, and IT people loved it, but then when they were selling the system to their bosses, especially like finance and that, they just didn't know what they were talking about, and the IT people struggled badly to sell the system internally themselves. So we often heard back is, we love the system, but we can't get budget to buy it. And a lot of the reason is because the person with the budget didn't see anything in it for them, or they didn't understand the data. So that's why we spend a lot of time introducing graphics and usernames so that most people can look at that and say, okay, I can see a peak there, so obviously there's a problem,
Yeah. Yeah, it's graphics rich. That makes it nice, and financial people love graphs. They can say, oh, I know what that red is, and I know what the green is. And
yeah, absolutely, you got it there.
On the other, can you break the other down?
Yeah, we can break the other down. Let me get an example of other. So there's what we have at the moment is that on this particular network, 7.28%. Oh, sorry, you're probably asking about the other in the graph.
Right, in the graph, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake there. Yeah, we take the top. Yeah, we can absolutely break it down. It'll break it down into the other, applications, ports that were in use. In this case, it breaks down this particular way of drill down breaks down into these are the machines responsible for that other traffic. One in particular is responsible for most, whatever, some SQL, some traffic over 2556, small amount of bit torrent here, and that makes up that other segment in the graph. Okay. Yeah. All traffic. Sorry, Tim.
That's where you usually see botted events, because it'll be minimal until it's used, and it's usually hidden somewhere as a non-standard protocol.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we've coverage. Any network we plug into, we'd like to see ourselves fingerprinting at least 90%. But what we have out there, it's most networks is way beyond that. In the next update to LANGuardian, actually, we're introducing a new feature which allows you to break this down or to customize that even more, because the top level report that we've got right now is, especially when it comes to traffic, is top applications. And in this, I've got one entry for file share. But we're going to allow people to even break this down more, so you can have file share traffic associated with NAS, file share traffic associated with finance server, okay? So that you can actually, instead of just all file share traffic lumped together in a big total, people will be able to go in there and define that this is a file share server, and when you run the report, then you can see it broken down by application, or by a server name, or maybe by a functional group. So customers, when they started using our application recognition, really liked it, but now they want to customize it for theirs. So developers, well, actually, they have it done. It's going through testing at the moment.
So how often do you release updates on an average basis? Once every 6 months?
We have an update at the moment. We're probably running it every 3 months. Would contain new features and bugs. So some updates be pretty minor. It's usually to address a bug of some description. The way a filter could be handled in a report, something minor. And then once every 6 months, there'll be an upgrade where there's actually something new in there, something, an additional feature or something that we already have, but it's just meant better. That's usually every 6 months you would see something like that.
And so bug fixes are quick, but you know that's good, because some people wait a year to upgrade software and they try to fix every bug at one time.
Yeah, no, we do have, if you keep updating, releasing stuff, your developers go crazy, and people don't know, how far behind or front they are with patches. If it's something serious, like when Heartbleed came out, for example, a couple of months back, obviously we jumped straight on that, and as it turns out, we weren't vulnerable, but we did do some work in the system, and that became an update straight away. There are some bugs that we have in there. We'll ask customers, and is this really bad? If it's really bad for them, sometimes we'll deploy a custom patch, although we're not big fans of that because it's a bit of a nightmare maintaining that type of thing. But if somebody's really, really bad and then absolutely have to have something, we do give people patches if they need them. But that is a very rare event.
Yeah. But don't give up on Heartbleed. It's still around. It'll be around for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, we included some Heartbleed reports in our system. So this, on the security, the very first one you see is Heartbleed exploit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the developers, I don't think I have any examples on this system. No, it's quite clever what it does, because of the way Heartbleed works with the request is sent, and then you ask for so many bytes, but you kind of spoof it, and you end up getting a whole dump from memory. LANGuardian is able to spot that query and the fact that the response is not what the user asked for, and that's an anomaly, and it reports that as potential Heartbleed exploit. Now, what we're finding is that there are some applications out there that behave kind of like Heartbleed. It's just that they're badly coded, which has opened eyes to some customers that this type of thing goes on. But that was the report we added within hours of hearing about Heartbleed, and customers have used this to manage the Heartbleed problem. Absolutely has not gone away. In fact,
there's a new version out already. So.
All right.
Now, but one of the problems with Heartbleed with the span port is there have been a lot of people that have their SIM equipment and monitoring equipment on the other side of the span port. So what Heartbleed decided to do, and you're seeing more and more of this, they started sending very large packets, which the span port just dumps because it doesn't want to handle that much in its buffer. It doesn't have that buffer range. So a lot of people that had monitors based on span never saw the Heartbleed, and their other malware attempts now are doing that on purpose, building big frames, which of course the span port won't pass, so the SIM equipment doesn't see it. So, I agree span has some viability, but if you're going to be doing it for security, I strongly suggest you get a tap.
Hey, Darragh, we're coming up the 45 minutes mark.
Sure.
Maybe you can kind of work your way to the concluding.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and actually, just maybe just a quick one on 10 points there. I 100% agree with him. If you're dealing with, if you're really focused on security, and especially at the perimeter or somewhere vital like that, taps definitely worth considering. We don't mind. We're a packet processor, so the more you give us, the better. So put a tap in there, absolutely. If you can live with the fact that you're going to drop data, and it's okay to drop data sometimes, it depends on what you're actually trying to do. But if you're looking at what's happening on a network, volumes, just want to get an idea what's happening, spam ports are a tremendous resource, but you got to use them for the right reason and don't abuse them.
Well, yeah, but I mean, a spam port, not only will a spam port create duplicate packets for you, but like you pointed out, it will drop things. So I think you have to be a very sophisticated user to really understand how to use a spam port. And again, a spam port is really was designed by Cisco as a test feature for the switches. Yeah. And so the goal of a switch is to get packets to the IP address correctly, not to monitor. So that's a secondary or tertiary or ternary level for a spam port. I don't disagree. A spam port's great for looking at who's talking to who, when, where, and how. But if you're doing deep forensics of any kind, a spam port's not acceptable. And also on top of that, they have come out. Even Cisco came out recently with some ways to hack your or to shut down your span port and hack it. And your switch. So what they're telling people now is, yeah, understand what if people would understand what a span port is and how it can be used efficiently, that'd be better than people now thinking that it is a ubiquitous, perfectly normal method of monitoring. And it actually causes, in a lot of cases, more problems than it does help. So I agree with you, but man, when you're in forensics world, it's got to be a tap. And by the way, PCI 3.0, the new demands are going to require people having total visibility. They will no longer accept that as a plead in a courtroom that, oh, I just didn't, we just didn't have full visibility. So.
No, absolutely, Tim, and I suppose that's like Chris from Garland, that specialises in product in this area, that they can tap into a network and give you a clean data source rather than a spam port, which again depends on your uses. But all I often say to people in this space is, don't worry too much about this. There is a solution out there. You can get visibility, but you might need to think about this and get some advice. There is a solution for you, whether it's a tap, a span, whatever it is. There is a solution out there.
Well, one good thing is you guys have got a really great free tool that you give people, showing them how to actually set up span ports to the best efficiency. And so that's another free tool you guys have.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose just to finish up, Denny was ringing the bell there. On our website, which we've done some work on, if you haven't been on in a while, if you log on to it today, you'll see a lot of changes. On the download section, you can download a free trial, but there's also the free software. And as Tim said, this is a spam port configurator. That's what it's kind of probably hard to see in the screen, but very simple. You put in an IP address of a switch, and then you say what you want to monitor, whether it's a port or a VLAN, and it sets it up for you. So it's it's not a license thing. It's completely free. Take it away and use it to configure spam ports. So that's on netfort.com. Just go to downloads, click the free software. So.
And also, we'll say that can be used for people that are doing using dedicated span ports that we call packet brokers, which I don't like that term. But you can also use this for setting up those that still do not have a real GUI, which is most of them.
And something we're, for the next, where we're going to develop the spam port configurator more is the spam port manager. What we find with people, they set up spam ports badly, but they forget that they've set up spam ports, okay? And there's nothing worse than having, set up a spam port and a switch trying to get stuff out to spam port. They're not even using it. That's complete waste. So our spam port manager will allow somebody to set up their spam ports, and when they log on, it actually tells them, reminds them, look, you've already got these spam ports set up, and you can manage them better that way. So it'll have like its own database, and it can show you, what you've done previously, and maybe you just might need to modify something, or maybe to delete some spam session you already set up. So we'll develop the spam port configurator a little bit more as more of a manager than just a configurator.
Good. Great.
Yeah, no, great presentation, great product, and I definitely see a lot of applications for our customers, and so appreciate you definitely taking the time to show us. So definitely enlightened me. Great product.
But you have the same facial expressions I have as we're watching this, Chris, which is that of fear. I mean, if someone were to run a copy of that on a home network, we'll pay any ransom.
That's right. That's right.
It's scary. I can't help but let me just, if I may, let me put in the last word for span port. I think that I mean I was a vendor once, and I sold products that really can survive with span port, without. But I always thought that span ports, people, there are people who like span ports. In fact, I often said that span ports is the defense attorney's best friend, right? It's the DNA. It's the DNA without the chain of custody. Yep. Anyway, I think that since this is a live demo, I think we've done that. It's a great product. It's an amazing product. It is truly an amazing product. But I think that somewhere in there, I think Darragh raised a good point, which I could kind of relate to. Is that sometimes you don't just sell to your direct customer, but you have to kind of sell to the manager, right? And so sometimes the technical people, might think that all that graphics and ease to use is sort of secondary importance, but I think in terms of the value to the organization up and down the chain is really, really important. That's my experience.
Yeah, and I want to answer one thing you talked about, Darragh, just quickly about the way they hacked the iCloud. It's kind of funny. The hackers actually used a tool that is designed for law enforcement to crack iPhones and get into the cloud, and that's how the hackers got into the iCloud. And of course, the cloud, as we all know, is not necessarily one of the most secure environments to be in, but that's how they did it. They actually used a tool that law enforcement uses, and that's how they cracked into the iCloud and stole all the pictures of the celebrities.
I actually read a very interesting article today about that. It says when you're signing up for something like iCloud, it's actually tell lies. And what it means by that is, in these iCloud services, they ask you to pick 3 secret questions. Okay, and it could be what was the name of your first dog. And for celebrities, that's very easy to crack because all that information's out there. It's very easy to find out what their name was, what their mother's name was, and they're all the standard secret questions. So the point they're making is lie. Your first dog was called, I don't know, Ferrari Testarossa or something. So long as you know what the answer is.
Well, you would think that ought to be easy, right? Asking celebrities to pretend that they're someone else. I mean, how could that be difficult? Hey, listen. I think we should really close the show. I'll let Darragh have the last word, but before I do that, Chris, welcome back again. If people come to Tim and I and says, I have a bunch of money, I got to buy a bunch of quality tabs, how do they find you?
They find us at garlandtechnology.com, and we actually released a blog series now that's going out weekly, very educational, more focused on the analyzers and the tools that are hooking up to it. So if you go to our website, click the blog button as well. It's a great way to get educated on connecting up different types of analyzers and tools to your network.
That's great. And maybe I should go take a look and help you to put together a Shockfest.tv episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, Chris. I was going to say, Chris and I are working on a lawful intercept webinar or series of webinars. I don't know, and we're definitely going to bring some of it to Love My Tool.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Darragh, it's good seeing you. Pleasure meeting you, and thanks for coming. So, what do you got to say to our viewers in a sentence or two that they could use in when they talk to the manager? Why do they need your product?
Sure, yeah. No, first, thanks yourselves for inviting me along today. What I'd say to them is, if you want to find out what users are doing on the network, then you need LANGuardian. If your manager wants to know, if you want to know what users are doing on the network, wired, wireless, get LANGuardian. It shows you the users, it shows you the graphics, you can see what they're doing. That's what we're all about.
Yeah. Thank you. And with that, we'll close the show. Thank you very much. See you next week. And go out there and be good. Bye-bye. Thanks, Chris. Bye. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Darragh. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, you can hang on a second if you want.